Check this out. Kiss my ass.
All right, Kevin is canceled, y'all. Thanks for joining the
Scattered Roots podcast,
bro. It's been a lot of...
That's not misogynistic. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Scattered Roots podcast. Rudy, how you doing today, man?
What's up, Kevin? I'm doing well. Thank you, everybody, for coming back to...
You're gonna ask me how I'm doing? It's fucked up.
How are you? How are you, sir?
I don't want to answer now. Continue.
Oh, you're so sensitive.
Go ahead.
What a sensitive flower. But we appreciate sensitivity. You know what I'm saying? It's a growing age. I'm glad that you're in touch with your feelings.
Yeah.
But hey,
and you hurt them. So.
Welcome back, everybody, to episode 2 of season 2. Episode, what is this? 13? Yeah, it's 13. Yeesh. Thus far of the Scattered Roots podcast. Yeah, I'm pretty sure my math is right there. And yeah, so today we are excited. I guess I'm excited to have a conversation.
Hello? Okay, cool,
I'm
Rudy.
very excited. Kevin is also excited, but I'm excited to have a conversation.
We're potting today, boys.
About, I guess, terminology and I think from the beginning of the podcast, right, we've always discussed how we describe ourselves. Like, I am a Mexican American, I am Latino, I am Hispanic, I am XYZ. And so there's a lot of different ways in which people can identify themselves and a lot of different terms that are out there. And some of it can kind of be very messy, right? Like, it's not a very clean science and well, at least where everyone understands. And so today we're going to dive into that word a little bit, right? Discussing the different terms, and one in particular, right, that's kind of been on the trend recently, and that's the word Latinx. And kind of like its history, and provide some context, right, about like where we're forming our opinions. Now, this is a conversation, right? We're not here to tell the right matter of fact of whether you should use what words and what words not to use, but we're just here to... Kevin has his opinions, I have mine. Again, we've said it before, we're not scientists, we're not social scientists, we're not sociologists, we're not any of these things. But I think that is where most of these conversations are being had anyway, right? Amongst just kind of people that are just everyday people. And so how they feel about these words and how they identify themselves. So I'm excited. You ready, Kev?
I'm ready, Freddy.
So I guess let me start with this. I guess, do you think these terms are of importance? Like, what? Like, have you thought about?
Hungry.
What?
No, you're canceled. The fuck kind of question is that?
No, for yourself, right? When you go to, when someone asks you, oh, like, tell me about yourself.
Are you talking about one in specific or
no? Just
umbrella?
Like, just terms in general, right? Like the way that you identify yourself. Like, do you put a lot of like thought into like what words you're actively
Okay, so I think I know what you're trying to ask, and
yourself?
my answer is yeah, no, not really. Like, just in common everyday talk, like I don't really actively think about, oh, am I Hispanic or am I Latino or am I, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of like, am I Spanish? I just use them interchangeably, even though that might not be the correct, it might not always be the correct thing to do. It might not always be the right thing to do. It just comes from like the context of just like everyday talk. It's just, I don't know, right? And
I think that's what most people can kind of relate to, right? You don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about like the specific words you use on a day-to-day basis.
Right. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's just not at like the forefront of your mind.
You just kind of go about your day, right? Like being who you are. Like at the end of the day, you are who you are.
It's almost like, and again, this isn't right, but it's almost like that thing where like you just kind of blanket call people Mexicans, even though, you know what I mean? Like, it's definitely not right. Sure. It's definitely not right because, right, there's a lot more than just Mexicans, but it's just kind of, because it's just not actively something that's like at the active forefront of your mind or whatever. So, and
maybe that's especially a thing because we're in Texas.
Yeah, that's
right, because there's not a lot of thought that has to go into like distinguishing between.
Yeah, you just kind of fall in the routine of like, I mean, yeah, like you said, we're in Texas, so the majority of the Latin people you do meet in Texas just happen to be Mexican. So like, as you grow up, as you whatever, like you
kind of like just associate anyone in that manner and kind of just attach that label to them. And again, these labels are terms, and again, it's messy, right? Like, there's not like a very clean way. And as I was kind of going through and
I think it speaks to, sorry to cut you off, I think it speaks to our mestizos, we're mestizos, right? Like we're like whatever the word is.
I was practicing in the car.
We're not Spanish. We're not scientists. Mestijos.
All right.
I don't know.
Next.
But like we're like mutts.
And
right?
we'll talk about that here in a little bit, right? Yeah. And kind of the impact that when I was doing some like background research about kind of where these terms kind of started to gain some traction and the influence of European colonization, and then like the movement afterwards, that the mestizaje,
whatever that word is.
Whatever the word is.
Google it and put the translate.
I literally did that before this episode, and now I'm just pooping it. But yeah, no. So like that influence, and so there was some pushback during that time about like kind of the erasure of like indigenous people, right? Like it was mestizaje was like celebrated, and kind of like, oh, we're gonna create our own mixing of cultures, because that's what it is, right? It's a mixing of like the European and like Mexican culture that came together. But there was kind of like this sentiment that it was rooted in erasing the indigenous culture that was already there. And so that's why a lot of like, especially Mexicans, right, kind of can speak more to their European roots and to their European influences as opposed to their like indigenous roots, right? Because you and I don't look Spanish, right? You can definitely tell that we look Mexican in some way. And so like that distinguishment comes from our indigenous roots, but we don't know a lot about it. Yeah. We know more about the European. And so like that's just another aspect that we'll jump into.
The Tenochtitlan, you know, you got Quetzalcoatl. He's like, no, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Well, there's so much that you really have to educate yourself on. And it has to be like an active thing, right? Because we grew up in the American education system and we're never going to do that here, right? We're going to learn about like America's history and even that is messy, right? Because it's so whitewashed. So, no, I think back to the original question, right? Are these terms important? I think what you said is a good way to look at it from a day-to-day perspective. Where not necessarily. It's kind of like you just kind of go about your day, like not really thinking about the specifics of it. But big picture, I think it does matter, right? Like using these terms and understanding these terms are very important. Right. And so we're going to kind of go down this list, and I'm going to ask you what kind of you think, how you would define them in the way you see them on a day-to-day basis, and then kind of maybe break down.
Ooh, I'm playing like Merriam-Webster, and I'm going to have to try to guess that word.
It's not Merriam-Webster. These are like definitions that I kind of put together from like Merriam-Webster and like the way they were used in like literature. Okay. So I guess one of the, and we've talked about this a bit before, right? But identifying people is strange, and people fit into multiple boxes multiple times, and that's what I hope like we go through this, what kind of highlight. But I guess the first one to start with this one, race. How would you define race?
Ooh, I don't know. Race. Like when
someone asks you, what race are you?
I don't know. I'm serious. I don't know how to define. I don't know.
And that's a super fair point, right? Some people don't know how to identify like their race. Okay, so let me provide the definition.
Race is a category of people that look or have a common ancestry. I don't know.
Okay, so you were like mad close there, right?
That's my guess.
It's pretty good until the very end. Okay. The ancestry part matters a little bit less, although there's an influence in like the lineage of it, right, from your ancestry. So it's the physical characteristics or qualities that are used to distinguish people in distinct groups, distinct groups. Right, so for example, the biggest being skin color.
Okay, so it's mainly a physical appearance.
It's a physical thing. Yeah, it's a physical appearance, which for a long time was kind of viewed from like a scientific scope.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like to just think about like I get it, right? There's skin colors and there's like features and stuff, but it's just crazy to be like, but that's not why all look the same.
It's not exclusively skin color, right? Like there's other physical.
No, I know, but still, like oh, you guys all have the same nose. You guys are this. Like that's just weird, like a weird concept.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I think people have always. It's a natural thing to happen, right? Where you kind of group yourself with people with which you have similarities, and so you find comfort in those similarities, right? So there's kind of like a natural order to that thing. Yeah. But nonetheless, right, once that happens, like there's people start to have to find a way to like label these things. And so that's where race comes in. It's the physical characteristics that are used to distinguish people. For example, we already said the big one, skin color, right? Hair texture and color is another one. Eye color and facial features. That's where like you have like Asian, right, where you have a different facial structure. Or eye color, right? When you have, lighter-eyed people. And so that's the main point that I want to give away with race was, while for a long time it's been used like or viewed from like a scientific lens, it's not necessarily like a thing. Right? Like scientifically, like there's not really a way to distinguish black people and I guess like white people, right? This is like when you look at the genetics of things. Okay. It's more of like a physical appearance that's been now, it's a social construct. So that's one.
Can't go into like the DNA. At the DNA was like what depicted how we looked. I'm just asking.
No, it does, right? And so that's why like that argument was used for such a long time, right? That it's rooted in science. But at the end of the day, it's still just a social construct. Yeah. Right? Like black people, white people, Asian people, like it's still.
And it seems like it's not also
visibly like making
not
like,
an exact science either, because you can't like how similar do you look to that person? How do you quantify that?
And
like,
that's why people can belong to different groups.
Yeah.
Right. So it again, it's a messy kind of thing to jump into. But okay, so that's race. I don't want to spend too much time on each particular one because we got a lot to go through. The next one was ethnicity.
Okay.
How do you define ethnicity, Kevin? How do you find your ethnicity?
I mean, I say I'm Mexican. I don't know if that's the correct answer or like the correct thing. If someone, what ethnicity are you? I'm Mexican. That's my response. Like in an everyday context.
Fair. Yeah.
If I had to guess like what it like actually meant, just based off of the context clues of this conversation, the fact that the other one was race, I'm gonna guess ethnicity has to do with like culture.
Boom. What grades?
I'm so fucking smart, dog.
Man, your intelligence turns me on,
my SAT
dog.
score was off the charts.
I bet, bro. Literally, your deductive reasoning skills are great.
Hell yeah.
But okay, yeah, no, you're exactly right. So ethnicity is more so defined as the cultural characteristics or qualities that can be used to distinguish people into distinct groups. For example, language, accents, religion, customs, food and dietary influences as well, right? So people that don't eat pork, right? It's kind of like an ethnic. Now, that's where you can have a lot of crossover because you can have people that belong to overlapping groups, right? So you can have someone that is ethnically Mexican, but racially black, right? Or ethnically, there's just a lot that you can like mix in there, right?
Whoa.
So, and I had like, there was this chart that was just showing you like the amount of like crossover that you can have. And that's why it gets extremely messy.
Would that be like an Asian, like a person of Asian parents who like they moved to Mexico and they like grew up in Mexico and like they pretty much speak Spanish and eat tacos and stuff, but they very much like appear Asian, so they're Asian in race but Mexican in their like culture?
Yes, exactly. Like, right, because like culturally you can be and
there's a lot of them,
and it can change as you move, right? Because you can be one and then move somewhere and then like your ethnicity has now changed even though your appearance is much the same. Right. And so I think that's why when we talk about ethnicity, we're talking less about like physical appearance and now more about these like cultural like traditions, like, right. Like you can have a Caucasian that lives in Montana that has a different ethnicity from a Caucasian that lives in, for example, Louisiana, right? Where the cultures
lives in Montana.
Shit, I don't know. Anybody out there in Montana? Hope y'all are doing well. Stay safe. Stop doing meth.
Is that what they do in Montana?
Oh, for sure, bro.
Oh,
North Dakota, South Dakota. Like, I think that's like the meth capitals of the world. I'm pretty sure.
Holy shit, you're putting me on. I don't know.
For more drug facts, follow Rudy. Not just playing. But yeah, right. So like it's and I had a couple of examples here, but again, I don't want to spend too much time just like trying to distinguish things. I think it's just important to provide some background, some context. Okay. So for ethnicity, right, that's where now we have this example of like Hispanic and Latino.
Well, I want to go back real quick before you go ahead. I not spend too much time on it, but I think the race question is the one that they ask you like in all documents, and like the only answers are like white, black, some Asian. I don't know. I never know what to fill out.
Yeah,
like,
and so that's where they started to add like, what's your ethnicity? Like, right, where you have Hispanic or Latino or non, right? That was kind of like a secondary question because again, that's an ethnicity.
Yeah, it
doesn't depend on like the physical characteristics of a person.
Okay,
so you can have someone that's black, but that is Latino, right? And nowadays Afro Latino. You can have someone that's Asian and also be Latino.
Right. Okay, so legitimate question: what are we supposed to fill out on that? Like, I always put other because I'm like, I don't.
There's some and
people say white, and I'm like, I don't.
So
think
if you
I look
have
white.
someone that, for example, if you have like a white passing Mexican, right? We know we have friends. Even the we just interviewed.
My friend.
Yeah, exactly, and he's white passing.
Yeah, white passing is full of.
So he would probably fill out white Latino.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of like now how we try to distinguish.
So it just kind of depends. What if I had like a really bad tan? I'm just asking. No, okay. All jokes aside, what the hell am I supposed to fill out?
Again, so like that's.
I just put other.
And you can, right? And I think that's where like these conversations matter. Is we need to be the ones that
just
help
shows how stupid the system
distinguish. I mean, yeah, right. Like it's trying to like break people up into groups when like it's not very clean.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's again subjective. Like how much do you look like a white person versus a black person versus like I think there's like 4 or 5.
Indigenous, right? Indigenous, Native American is
I can remember
a race that you can put. Asian is a race that you can put.
Yeah. So it's like I'm supposed to be like, how much do I look like any of these, and check the box that I think applies. It's weird, but
yeah, no, and a lot of that comes from like yourself, right? You have the ability to self-identify the way that I think is most appropriate to you.
Okay.
So that's ethnicity, right?
Yeah.
Now the one that you were kind of referring to. Now let's talk about nationality.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm Mexican as fuck.
How do you define nationality?
I'm assuming it's like the country you're born in, and or like lived in the majority of your life. Like, you know what I mean?
No, you're exactly right. So nationality is belonging to a nation state. And here's where there was like some kind of, not ambiguity, but I guess like the clean cut definition relies on citizenship.
Yeah.
Right? Like, are you a citizen of this country? If so, like that's what your nationality comes from, right? You can have dual citizenship in some circumstances, right? So you can be Mexican and American.
Yeah, I always have to put American.
Now, I will say, yeah, exactly. And so that's where like there was that distinction. There's legal versus like cultural, like I think nationality. In a way,
okay.
Right.
I can shine there.
And so exactly, right. So legally, I'm an American.
Yeah.
Right? I was born in the United States. That's my citizenship. I don't have dual citizenship in Mexico, so I can't say that I'm Mexican American or American Mexican, whichever way you want to put it. But culturally, like my nationality, I always have self-identified as being Mexican, right? I say Mexican American sometimes, yeah. And that's a more traditional way that I think our parents grew up distinguishing themselves, right? That's kind of more of a thing in the, I don't know if it was like 60s through the 80s, but like kind of in that time, they referred to themselves I'm Mexican, Salvadorian, Honduran, Colombian. That's kind of, if someone asks, oh, like, where are you? That tended to be their answer.
And that's why I don't know any of the other meanings of the words.
And that was the simplest one, right? Nationality is the simplest one because, again, it depends on just birthright, right? Yeah. And there's only start to be some kind of overlap when you start to look at it more like culturally as well. But if you just look at the legal definition, where you were born, what citizenship do you have? That's your nationality.
Cool. That one's easy.
Now let's move on to the next one, right? And this is where now we start to have some more focused on us as a people. Okay. Hispanic. How do you define Hispanic?
Hispanic people are people that have an ancestry from the country of Hispaniola, aka España. Okay. Back in the colonial colonizing times.
Okay. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Therefore, they're people whose ancestry can be traced back to Spain.
Okay, yeah. I mean, that's about right? So it refers to a group of people that come from Spanish-speaking origins.
Oh, aka people that were colonized by Spain.
For the most part, yeah, exactly.
Is there another country in Europe that speaks Spanish?
I think there's like islands.
Okay.
But that are like adjacent to Spain.
Yeah.
That are kind of like are the Canary Islands considered a part of Spain?
I suggest you continue.
Or are they own?
You know how I said I was smarter earlier? Geography is my weak side.
That's not your thing. Yeah, we know. And population sizes.
Hey.
But okay, yeah. So Hispanic refers to a group of people that speaks Spanish, right? Or that their origin comes from a Spanish-speaking background, right? So that's where you can have like Mexico, but that also includes Spaniards themselves. Yeah. It also includes, because that's their native tongue as well. However, that is not, I guess, can you think of the issue with using Hispanics to refer?
Easy, Chief.
What is it?
Portugal was also out here colonizing. And they speak Portuguese.
Exactly, which like the main group that you are then leaving out when
Brasileños.
Is Brasileños, right? Because they speak Portuguese.
That's it, right?
That's the biggest country. Now there are pockets in amongst like other places that do speak Portuguese, but for the most part, it's a pretty safe bet to say that it's mostly Brazilians.
Are there some French too? Are there Latin countries where they speak French?
Because
France was out here colonizing too.
We're gonna jump to that here in a little bit. I got you on the France.
Damn colonizers. Sacre bleu.
Okay, you sound like one.
Omelette du fromage.
Oh my! Hey, shout out to Dexter's Lab. Omelette du fromage. Omelette du fromage.
Omelette du fromage.
So that's the issue with the label Hispanic or that term, right?
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Is it encompasses. So it's not a good way of referring to people from Latin America because it includes Spaniards and it excludes Brazilians.
Yeah, but see, they don't teach you, not that maybe they do teach you, and I was a bad student, didn't pay attention, but like you grow up just saying that word. Like,
for sure.
I'm Hispanic.
And that's a part of the American education system.
Yeah, and it also, because we all know that's garbage. And two, it also might go back to like the thing we were talking about with Mexicans in Texas, like the big majority of Latin America, like not all of it for sure, right? Brazil's a big chunk that's missing out. They are Spanish speaking, so then Hispanic just becomes the blanket term.
It fits very well in our community, and even in that circumstance, right? When you're referring to Central Americans, it still applies. And for most of Latin America, it still applies. So it was a term that when it started to be used, just caught very easily, right? Because there was finally something to help distinguish these people that made sense.
Yeah.
But I guess it just wasn't looking at the grand picture of things, right? Which can happen, and we'll talk about I think what's happening now. And so that and just to provide a little bit more context, that term started to become more of a thing, especially in the 1980s. When can you guess what happened?
What's his name?
It has more to do with what we do. You talked about you didn't do this recently.
Oh, the census.
They added Hispanic
the Chicano movements
to the census, and the Chicano movement had something to do with that as well.
I forget his name. What was his name? Oh my god.
I don't know who you're talking about.
Like the civil rights Hispanic icon. I forget his. I feel like such a bozo right now.
This not hung up on.
I'm pretty sure that was right. I'm pretty sure it says such as.
Okay. Well, again, that's when.
Wow, what a fucking jackass I am, and you.
Yeah, I know. Everyone knows this. It's fine. So then now you have the introduction, or I guess that sparked a conversation about, okay, is there a better word that we can use besides Hispanic? And that's what we now have Latino or Latinos, right? And that one, can you, I guess, provide how you would define Latinos?
That's a good question. Actually, because I never really thought about it. I guess Latin America just referred to everything south of the USA. In my mind, I don't know I don't know what the history of the word, if it is geographically based, or if it's based in something else. As far as I know, and I'm probably wrong, it's based on geography, and it's everything south of Texas.
Of the United States, yeah, exactly. South of Texas and like the piece of California and Arizona that touch. And New Mexico that touch.
So literally from Mexico all the way down.
All the way down.
Chile or whatever the fuck.
So Argentina and Chile at the very bottom.
Yeah.
No, you're exactly right.
Yes. Fucking smart.
But now, so when I was doing this, I was like,
Jesus.
okay, so it refers to, right, it's a play on that, like Latin America, right? Latinos coming from this region. And it got me to thinking, like, okay, where does even Latin America come from? Have you ever thought about, like,
That's what I'm saying. I have no idea. I don't know.
Oh, that's what you said. Like, you have no idea where that comes from. And so that's where I started to kind of like do a little bit of research and diving in. And so we'll talk about the origins of that if it's okay. Hey, and pull me back if I'm starting to get too historical here.
Every time I try to leave, something keeps pulling me back. Sorry.
What was that?
That was Chinky, dog.
Where did that come from, though? Oh, pulling me back.
Yeah.
Ah, gotcha.
I need you in my
Okay. So this is where we're going to jump back now a little bit to what you were talking about with mestiaje. Or I apologize.
We're probably butchering that word.
The M word. That actually sounds better.
Yeah,
but,
that does.
Okay, so it comes from, right, so geographically you're right. It was the region that was colonized by the Spanish Empire that was referred to as the Monarquia Hispanica.
Wait, Latin?
But this is, okay, we're going to get there. Don't worry.
That don't make no sense already.
I'm taking you on the journey.
I'm ready.
All right, that stands for the Hispanic monarchy. That's where we start talking about how we have like this now like push to like mix these cultures of like European and Mexican influence. However, the downside to that was that it did kind of erase like the indigenous side of things and more so focused on the European influence. And that's why like the standard of beauty became like white passing people, like lighter skinned people, blonde hair, still lighter eyes, right? That still just became the standard of beauty because although this mixing of cultures was kind of like embraced, at the end of the day, it's still kind of, there was still a group of people that was victim to like being oppressed, right? Okay, so then move on to now the Latin word for Iberia or Iberia. I really don't know how to say it correctly, but it stands for the home of the Spaniards is Hispania, right? So you have the Monarquia Hispanica, and then you have the Latin word for the home of Spaniards, which was Hispania, which now you have the coming in 1856, Chilean, a Colombian writer, coined the term Latina, America Latina.
Say that again?
Who was it? It was a Chilean and a Colombian writers. Okay. They came to coin that term. Now,
I was in my mind trying to decide whether it's monarquia or monarquia. Sorry.
monarquia. No, you're probably right. It's monarquia. So from that point, they coined it to, and there's some like.
So I just made it up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Based on like the Latin root of the word, like Hispania, like again, I don't know. There's a lot that you can dive into here.
Why did I just realize that Latin was a language in Rome? I'm stupid.
Yeah.
I'm so stupid.
So the reason it was done, right, there's two major points. There's two major thoughts, schools of thought.
Okay.
One was because of there was a wantingness by Europeans to kind of label this area that was colonized, right? And they spoke these Romance language, right? They spoke Spanish, Portuguese, and French in some areas of Latin America. That's what you were referring to earlier, right? There are pockets in the Caribbean, especially, where they speak French.
Yeah.
And so these Romance language, like, is vulgar Latin America. Now, it's just that, right?
All
There's
the pieces have come together.
So there's that, right? That it was kind of an attempt by Europeans to like kind of refer to a group of countries that have been colonized and that now spoke these Romance languages.
They're the ones that speak all the languages that derive from Latin.
Exactly.
Oh.
Boom. Okay, so then now there's also though that the essence that the push for Latin America was to help kind of unite people against like American imperialism, right? The influence that America had on Latin America. And that's the argument that this Chilean and Colombian writer made back in about 1856. Ooh. Right? They were trying to push this anti-American imperialism sentiment that was happening at that time, right? Like where the influence was very heavily being pushed. And Latin America was actually embraced very heavily by Napoleon.
Bonaparte?
Mm-hmm. The third.
The short guy?
That was, the short dude, who was at that point trying to establish a nation state in Mexico, right? So he was trying to tie together, right? Like, oh, you guys are Latin America. Like, we also speak a Romance language, right? He was trying to kind of like butter us up before like he tried to colonize us again.
Before Cinco de Mayo? Was this before or after Cinco de Mayo happened?
I mean, that was kind of like their first attempt, right? Like during Cinco de Mayo, the Battle of Puebla, when they like came in.
Yeah.
And then
didn't like that.
They did it again and they won. And then we fought back and then we won again. Yeah. But okay, so that's where, and that was the first thing I was like, where does Latin America even come from? Like, right, like I was so confused, but like even like I didn't have a background on that. So there you go. Now you have that background a little bit. So then now fast forward, right now we're in the 1980s. Hispanic is a term that's being used to like identify us. Doesn't really fit the bill very cleanly. Latino comes into play, right, and that appears on the census in the year 2000. Okay.
Barely,
that's
bro. Crazy.
So that is not an old word, for sure, right? Like it's still fairly new.
Yeah.
And so then now that brings us back full circle to the kind of main point of today's discussion, is now this push for the use of the word Latinx to define us as a people and a group of people. So I guess let me start there, Kevin. What is your opinion of the use of the Latinx word?
Oh boy. So I don't know, because if I say something, you're just gonna come at me all offensive.
For sure, again, right, and that's why we provided like the context.
And I mean, that was you, by the way. That wasn't me mimicking the people. That was me mimicking you.
All right, whatever, bro. I mean, I definitely am willing to like challenge you in some ways. So I'm always gonna have a rebuttal.
Here it is, right?
Because we don't always share the same opinions on a lot of things.
Yeah. Here it is. I don't think it's super necessary. I don't think that it has its place, because that's what I want to say. Like, I understand a lot of the argument for it, right? I understand that it's like the biggest thing pro for it, and why I rock with it is because it's going to spread awareness to this like LGBTQ movement and
I guess let me ask that question. Like, what when you think of the word Latinx, what does it mean to you? Like what? In what context do you take the word?
In what context do I take the word? I don't know. I just see it online. I don't know what you kind of mean by that question. Like
I guess like when you see it used, like where do you see it being used most often?
Twitter.
Like how do you? Okay.
Literally.
But for what?
Just to gender neutralize whatever they're trying.
Okay, for sure.
Trying to talk about or whatever. So this is my point. I think that there's also already a gender neutral term. There already exists this concept of gender neutrality. Yes, Spanish is a gendered language, right? Every object has a fucking gender. Like that's just the way of the language, right? But there's also a they term. So when you try to blanket statement Latinos, I don't think that's like offensive, exclusive. I don't think that automatically excludes people that are non-binary.
Okay.
In my opinion, like, yeah, like.
You think the solution already exists within the language? Yes,
right? Now, that being said, if you want to talk about individual, because someone might not be a Latino or Latina, and there is no like gender neutral singular form, then sure, if you want to be like labeled Latinx, then cool, right? But to adopt it as like the blanket and just gender neutralize everything, like niños,
like referring to a crowd of people.
Yeah.
Like you are on the boat that Latinos fits and works and does not need to be fixed. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
But for an individual person who believes that those terms, Latina and Latino,
don't apply to them,
and
they want to be,
you are willing to say, hey, like Latinx works.
Yeah. If somebody wants to be like, no, don't call me Latino or don't call me Latina. All right, cool. What do you want me to call you? Latinx. Okay, like that's cool. I mean, phonetically, that shit don't make no sense, but that's neither here nor there. Like, if that's what you want to be called, cool. Like, I think that's
important.
Too,
right?
like,
I think addressing like the linguistic argument is important, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's a perfect term. Like, yeah, again, phonetically, it makes no sense.
Why does it not make sense, Kevin? Provide some context for
how people that are hearing that. Like, how do you say it? People don't even know how to say it. Like, is it Latinx? Is it Latinx? Is it Latinx? Like,
I think even in...
I looked that up, and from what I read, we've been saying Latinx.
Yeah,
and it's Latinx. Oh, sorry, Latinx. I was saying Latinx. Yeah.
I may have been using both. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying.
No, you're right. And it's not even a clean way. There's not a clean way of... And maybe it's just us, like, as a people, like, coming together and be like, how do we say this word? Yeah, all right, we chose it. Move on, next point. But if it's a challenge in using it in English, right? Because it's a word that's commonly seen.
Yeah, I think you're going where I was going. Yeah.
American media, and on American Twitter, in the American higher education system, right? It's still even difficult to use. It makes even less sense in Spanish.
Yeah, how do you say it?
And do you want to provide a little bit of context on, I guess, for people on why that is?
What do you mean? I mean, how do you pronounce it? It's the same argument. How do you pronounce it in Spanish? I'm trying to think of Spanish words with the X in it. And the only one that comes to mind is Oaxaca. Like, so how do you say?
Yeah.
How do you say?
And you don't even hear the X in Oaxaca.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I'm sure there's others. Like, I'm not a whatever the people who study or language and pronunciation are. Like, whatever that. But so I'm trying to think of words off the top of my head that have an X in it. I don't think people in Spanish can say it. Like, how do you have someone in Spanish say it? Do you know?
I have no idea.
So that's the problem, right? Like, you're trying to solve a problem for the percentage of the population, or for the people who speak another language, when you don't even understand fundamentally like that language, and that language's pronunciation. I think that's a beautiful way of like putting that, right? It's that that's that literally describes the problem like pretty perfectly, right? And it's when I saw like the term, it made sense, right? It's linguistic imperialism. Right, it's again Americans applying more colonialists.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, same. Right, it's Americans creating a solution for another group of people without fundamentally understanding.
Here they go, pulling their noses where their shit don't belong.
Where it don't belong.
Ah, damn it.
And so when I first, let me talk about like my like relationship with the word.
Before you do that, I want to just really quickly say, as long as the intent is there, like, so that's why I understand it, right? Like, if the intent is again to spread awareness and, you know, establish a better way of life, I guess I'm not sure, but for the people who identify as such, then cool. But yeah, like it is a problem. It's still not. It's not perfect.
It's exactly right, and it's challenging. Again, let me provide my relationship. So when I first heard it, I was like, oh, totally makes sense. You know, like. Spanish is a gender language. When you refer to a group of people as, hey, Latinos, right? That I believe that's rooted in...
You were looking at it with an Anglo context, right?
For sure, exactly. Oh, and again, that's my reality, right?
Yeah.
I'm Mexican-American. English is my dominant language. Spanish is not my second language, although I grew up as a baby speaking Spanish first. the context of the X made sense to me, right? I could make it fit because again, right, Latino, Latina, Latinos, I think being used as the they, as you described, that I think that existing within the language is rooted in misogyny, right? Like where you refer to first men dominantly before you refer to women. And I do believe that that is the main issue with trying to keep Latinos as the, I guess, word to refer to they, right? As a group of people. Because I think that is still prevalent.
Okay. To that, I would say, I mean, perhaps, I mean, I'm not saying you're not wrong. I don't know the fucking history of the language, but I do know that this language is a part of people's ethnic backgrounds, and people have grown up with this culture, and
For sure.
they take pride on it. Like for me, like I take a big pride of being able to speak Spanish,
Me
whether
too.
even though it's not perfect or whatever.
For sure.
And I wish
we
I
could even say
better.
whatever the word is.
Yeah, yeah, y'all saw that.
Mestiaje.
y'all heard that here
Mestiaje.
first.
I think it's like mestiaje.
Sure.
Only took me 42 times.
So, I mean, maybe it's rooted in misogyny, whatever. Like, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't reflect the reality of people who use it these days, or it doesn't reflect, right? Like, when I'm saying Latinos, it's not because I'm like, yeah, fuck you women. Like,
Yeah, for sure. Like, I guess your intent isn't there.
and I think that's the case for a lot. So now you're trying to, again, take a big part of people's culture and change it, right? And the problem is that it's not people in that culture that are trying to change it. It's people outside of that culture trying to change it. It's the Anglos, again, the Americans, the people here trying to change it. So
And I guess that's where I'll put like I'll provide some pushback, right? Because then that made me think, okay, well, one, I couldn't really find a clean origin of the word, like where it was first coined, where it was first used. Like the only thing that I can really find is that it was around 2004, where I think we're now having a bigger conversation around like the LGBTQ community, specifically like, right, transgender people and non-gender conforming, right, like non-binary. And there's not especially here in the United States, right, this group of people starting to try and find a way to identify themselves, especially because, and it was interesting to read, like, you know, like these op-eds from people that are, for example, like gay and Mexican, because it for a lot of them it was like it's the first time that I've had to address my identity from like in both spaces at the same time.
mm-hmm.
Right, like usually I'm addressing my Latin identity or like, you know, my cultural background, or I'm addressing my sexual orientation, my LGBTQ like identity. Now, never really have I had to address both at the same time, which I thought was really interesting to read. And like I think the push for the word does come from members of the LGBTQ community that are Latinos, right? There I go saying Latinos, right? In the United States. So I don't think it's completely Anglo white people making up this term. I do think it has a lot to do with American Latinos, right? Latino Americans here in the United States that have maybe a higher education.
Yeah, but I mean, they still have that American, kind of like we do. So it's like,
you're exactly right, right? And it doesn't do a good job of actually solving the problem where it matters most, and that's in the countries where this language is spoken.
Mm-hmm.
So that I'm totally with you. I'm on board with, and I guess this has kind of been an ongoing thing since like the 2000s. Are you familiar with any of the other attempts that?
Yeah, one of them. I don't know how to say it.
How?
There's an E at the end of Latin.
Okay, so we'll talk about that one at the end.
That's the only one.
Because that one's the more recent one from like the timeline that I was able to establish. But it was around 2004-ish, right, where Latinx and like these other alternatives came to be. But one is Latinat.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen this one, Latinat?
The at sign.
So it's basically Latin and then with the at symbol at the end.
Right?
Yeah. And so that was. I have seen that, actually. Do you know like what the I guess the thought behind it was?
Well, because there's the O and then the A's inside.
The O and then the A's inside. There you go. Well, at first I was like, how does this make sense? You know what I'm saying? Like I just initially looking at it, it didn't make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's the O and the A put together.
Say, honestly, if I'm like, I remember seeing that one, and that one made more sense to me, like off rip.
Okay, can you tell me, or based off the top of your head, the two problems that were like, I guess the biggest.
Biggest one is the same one with Latinx. How the fuck do you pronounce it? It's even worse. Like,
okay, I guess that's 3 problems because that's actually not one of the two.
Oh really?
That I had.
Well, it's even worse. Like Latinat. What the fuck is that? Like how do you say it?
It makes less sense.
It looks great on a written.
Yeah, it looks cool like when you're presenting like a thought piece maybe.
If I have to use my critical thinking skill, I'm assuming because it only includes male and like female. Is there like non-binary? It's exclusive to non-binary people?
Not necessarily.
Oh, okay.
All right, so we'll go back to one of the original issues with like Latinos, and it's talking about misogyny.
Okay.
The idea was that
because the O is bigger. Get the fuck out, bro. No, I'm not with that shit. Just because the O. Now you're a problem with the @ sign? Well, it's the @ sign, dude.
Well, the idea was that the O encompasses the A, so the O is still the dominant letter.
Yo, check this out. Kiss my ass.
All right, Kevin is canceled, y'all. Thanks for joining the Scatterbrains podcast,
bro.
It's been a lot of.
That's not misogynistic. How is an @ sign misogynistic?
Again, I haven't been able to.
That's people putting their own prejudices on shit, bro. That's people putting their own. Stop projecting. That's projection.
So? Yeah,
man.
I mean, hey, I'm all
for not being misogynist. Like, fuck misogynistic.
You sound misogynistic right now.
No, fuck that. But the @ sign. Bro, what? Because I think the @ sign is cool.
Again, this is just what I heard, right? And the reason why I didn't really catch. The other reason is similar to what you're describing. It's not something that you can use in actual like language, right?
That's what I meant.
Like reading and writing, and even if you try to use it on social media platforms, the @ symbol, so you can't even use it.
Damn, fucking Twitter.
Like online anyway.
Gotcha.
Which is where a lot of literature lives nowadays, right?
Yeah.
So that was one attempt that kind of lost a lot of traction, and then we had Latinx, and here's why I do think the use of the word is less, I guess, Americanized and more to do with like Latinos that are in the LGBTQ community, right? Because you can kind of track the popularity of the term and see where like there were like spikes in the use of it.
You're going to talk about the tragic events?
Mm-hmm. So like one of the biggest ones was, do you know what I'm talking about?
Pulse.
Yeah, the Pulse nightclub in 2016. And some of it had to do with Trump, right? When Trump was using kind of that
He shall not be named. Thank you.
Yeah. It was using that event, right? That tragedy as like an Islamic phobic moment to like, the rhetoric that he speaks in like kind of, trying to like fearmonger, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And so there was so when people started to like search that event, right, people that hadn't come across that word for the first time, they started to see like Latinx community because it was a gay club, right? And so those people...
Then we're like, what does this mean? And then Google that.
Exactly. Okay. So then there was a spike in interest there. So, but the reason those words were even included in those, op-eds and those articles were because...
It was in Miami?
Orlando? Okay. Well, yeah, because there was a big LGBTQ community that was Latin. Yeah. So that was what they used for themselves. Yeah. Right. So again, while I see that it's again like an American way to like solve this problem, I don't think it's complete. I think you can't completely blame it on that, right? Because we said this before, right? I'm Mexican American. Just because like I'm not fully Mexican doesn't deny my Latin origins, right? Even if I didn't speak Spanish, that doesn't void my Mexicanness. While it may be difficult for me to identify ethnically with like the language, nonetheless, I am still who I am, right? And I look the way that I look. So yeah, you had that kind of like peak, and then now you have the word that you were kind of referring to earlier.
Latin. I don't know how to say it.
It's Latine.
Oh.
So I think that makes more sense. I think I haven't, and it's hard because I couldn't find literature.
People don't like that one though, right?
I couldn't. Well, it's just less popular right now.
Huh. I think it makes more sense. It sounds.
I think better. Latinx makes more sense to again people that have a background with English and Spanish. So that's why it caught a lot of traction, especially that there was like a like research done more recently. It was like in 2019, 2020, on who's using the word, right? And it's about a quarter of Hispanic Latinos, Latinas are familiar with it, and about 3% use it. And the people that do use it and have heard it tend to be younger, Democratic, and in higher education. Right? Those are like if those three things could be checked off, then more than likely that person had either heard or uses the term Latinx. And I think because that's kind of the demographic that we kind of fall into, that's why I think we think it's kind of so prevalent. And Latine is an alternative that has kind of started to be used now because I think it's trying to address the linguistic argument because you can use it, I think, a little bit easier when speaking Spanish, right? Like mi gente Latinos, you can say mi gente Latine, Latines.
I think you could just see it and read it and give it to like my grandma.
And they
like,
could make sense.
Abuela, ¿cómo se dice esto? Latin. You can sound it out.
Exactly.
How you can't do that with Latinos.
Yeah. So I will say it was hard to find like actual like literature, and I'm not gonna act like I sat here and like spent days like trying to find it, but literature that was from like countries specifically in Latin America, like whether it be like a Mexican peer-reviewed journal or like a Colombian peer-reviewed journal that kind of addressed the issue, a lot of it was from the American higher education system, although they did always try to ask Latino Americans, it's just even weird trying to say it, but it's an adjustment, bro. And language is fluid. Like, is it not? Like, language is socially constructed. It's there to change. I'm never gonna be like,
yes, but again, going back to like been a part of language, and people have fought and died and whatever to preserve it, especially Spanish. Like, so.
But
for sure,
is your fight to preserve the language also like?
Why can't we have both? Like,
for sure,
it's not preserving my language, and it's. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's why I said earlier what I said. Like, if an individual wants to be identified a certain type of way, then I'm all for it because it's like they deserve that too. Like, non-binary people deserve to be represented and included in yada yada, like etc.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. Like, they have a right to be respected the way that they want to be identified. For sure, absolutely. Exactly. And I think that's where we like are like very on the same page. Where like we're not the kind of people, because there's definitely people out there that are like, this is dumb. I don't want to get involved in. Yeah. You're either a boy or a girl.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like
MAGA. Like, that's usually what they sound like.
Yeah, but no, I'm all for it. Like, let them rock, man. Like,
for sure. I'm all about.
Earlier we were talking about
respecting someone's reality, especially for like. One thing that I never understood, right, is this idea that like people are just out here trying to be different. Being trans, being non-gender conforming is, I don't want to say like it's hard, but it's a hard reality, right? I don't think it's something that people just choose because they want to. And so if there's a way that I can like respect their reality and help them feel more comfortable, especially when it's something as simple as like referring to them with the correct pronouns and figuring out like what they're most comfortable with, like it's not hard. Right? It doesn't require a lot of effort as a human being to like respect someone's reality.
Yeah, no, it's not hard. Yeah, for sure. I agree wholeheartedly. But what I'm saying is now when you want to, again, morph the entire and go and gender neutralize the entire language, that's when it's like becomes not a problem, because at the end of the day, like I'm not going to down this hill. Like,
yeah, like I think you've said that before.
Like, like I don't really have a horse in this race personally. Like me speaking, like go back to like everyday talk, I still say Hispanic when I shouldn't. Like, like, and I don't have any offense behind it. There's no ill will towards it.
Because the same
intent
thing,
is important,
but see,
right?
that's the thing, right? Like, even Hispanic was kind of, while its origins lie from, right, like what I was referring to before, right, the monarquía, España, whatever I said. When it got put on the census by the United States is when it really started to gain a lot of traction. Yeah. So is that not the same kind of thing where like, like the United States, the Anglo,
I don't know,
are influencing the way we identify ourselves?
I don't know, because I wasn't around back then. I could ask my like parents, for instance, like what they said in Mexico when they were growing up, if the term gente hispana was a thing.
Yeah, did they refer to themselves as Hispanic or Hispanos, right? Like that's a good question to ask of that generation, because I'm unaware, right? But I know for me, it was just kind of normal. Yeah. So I think maybe that's kind of where I'm hoping like things kind of push. I will say this, right? If someone had to ask me like how I feel about it, I think I embrace any term that will help someone, again, feel comfortable and respected. However, I do understand the idea of trying to respect the language and the linguistic argument. So I guess my hope is that the solution comes from, right, the trans and LGBTQ community from within these countries.
Yeah, I think that'd probably be for the best. How do you feel about, because I've seen these kind of points and arguments being made. So how do you feel about people who feel like the term, and not only Latinx, but like we're obviously speaking Latinx here specifically, but just in general, that I'm going to say liberal, the liberal, like media, liberal people, liberal, whatever, pander to, right? Because we're not going to, liberals oftentimes try to like get minority votes, this, that, and the other, whatever. Mm-hmm. And that they feel like the liberal media uses these terms to pander to those people.
Absolutely. Right.
And do you feel like you are for it? Do you want to be pandered? Do you see it like in a negative? Like how what's kind of like your...
I think that's like, now we're kind of like diving into like, like political philosophy.
And I'm not asking what loaded. I'm genuinely like
no,
asking.
for sure. No, and I think it's hard for me to like not answer it in a non-loaded way. Right. So I'll say this. I think, sure, like liberal media will try to pander to us as a people because, they've done it to most minority communities to where they try to say like, hey, like we're on your side. Look at us embracing like these terms. I do think the intent to kind of convince us that it's for us can be both positive and negative.
Okay.
Right. Like I guess I see the concern, but at least I feel like there's a genuine attempt by most people on that side to be embracive and inclusive, right? When I don't feel that on the other side of things, right? Okay. I think they're a little bit more just.
So I think it all kind of depends, right? Because it's like, can you talk the talk, but now can you walk the walk once?
Exactly, right? Yeah. Like at the end of the day, while like sure you embracing the term matters, and I guess maybe it's different because I'm not. Again, I'm a male that can easily identify as Latino as I do, right? The misogyny doesn't impact me. Or calm down.
I'm playing, bro. I'm playing, chillax.
But it's easy for me to say like, oh, like it doesn't impact me in that way, right? If you like pander using the Latinx term, but I know it does to other people, and so it's at that point where like it's not me to decide whether like this is the right or wrong thing to do. It depends on that community, and I'll support that community in whatever it is that they decide.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think again going back to it comes again to people outside of a certain demographic, and again in general, we're talking about Latinx, but it could be or Latinx. Sorry, see, I don't know what I'm talking about. Latinx. People outside of a certain culture trying to disguise themselves into that culture and solve problems that are in that culture for those people. And so
exactly. Like and I have a little excerpt here that I think kind of like somewhat like is basically what you're trying to say. Because there was an op-ed in like 2015 right after, because 2014, 2016 is when there's like a big spike in the interest of the of like I guess like the Google Trends, right? People Googling what is Latinx. And there's even like some interviews from like Vice and from like NBC Latino of like people walking around asking, do you even know what this word is? And like the trends are definitely there, right? The younger they are, the more likely they are to know. But in 2015, there was an op-ed by these two writers in here. Let me see if I can find. Okay, here it is. In our opinion, the use of the identifier Latinx as the new standard should be discouraged because it's a buzzword that fails to address any of the problems within Spanish on a meaningful scale. So I think that's just kind of, again, and these are people in those actual countries now.
What's your sources, Rudy? Who said that? Where's that from?
I forgot. Both of their names was.
Did you not go to school? AMA, bro.
Hey, bro, whatever. It was like Gilberto, I forgot it was like Guerra and like Oberra or something like that. But that was kind of their main concern, right? Is saying that like this just doesn't do anything for the actual people with which you're addressing. And it was interesting because I asked this question and I had a conversation with one of my followers on Instagram. Not that I have a lot, right? But just like the people that like I follow. And I asked them like what their opinions were. And if it's cool, I'm going to share a couple of those. Because one of them was very much like, very strongly rooted in like the use of the word.
Send your DMs and you too can get a shout out on the show.
I'm not gonna name anybody because I don't want to put anyone's opinions out there. I haven't asked.
Name them. Fuck that. We here today, boys.
All right. Well, let's start with you, Kevin Ortiz. You said.
I'll play it.
No. I'm just gonna name a couple and I'm gonna see like what you think, and I'm only gonna name the ones that I think because I do think some people missed the or didn't understand the assignment.
Damn. You hate to see it.
Or maybe I just don't think that their opinions were, I guess, worth mentioning. Whatever.
I kind of want to hear one of them. No. It's cool. We're not saying who they are.
So this one I think is a good one that I think we can both agree on, right? It's a good attempt at inclusivity, but misses the natural flow of Spanish.
The natural what now?
The natural flow.
Oh,
of Spanish. I think that's what we're saying, right? And I think we're there for the intent, but it kind of misses the mark a little bit.
Yeah. I'm always gonna be there for intent, man. I'm all for it. You know how you talking about earlier about identifying ourselves as X, Y, Z, yada 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 yada. Yada? We are all humans.
Where are you at with your pronoun game? Do you think you do a pretty good job
of addressing people with their correct pronouns? I'm fucking trash at it. Like I might say just something, but if they tell me, I'll be like, oh, I'm so sorry. My bad.
Man, it's hard. It's tough, and I think that's like the an example of what's going on here, right? Like it's gonna be hard sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. So. But yeah, I'm always for the intent. If the intent is good. So
okay, here's another one.
I like that person.
So I thought that was an appropriate response. Here's another one. It's a new thing for me. I'm not sure I understand the origin, but I feel it's really only in the U.S.
Yeah, I think we've said that because how do you say it in Spanish, man? How do you like if there's a non-binary person in Panama and he wants to come out or share his identity with his tia or his mother, how the fuck are they gonna
exactly like how do you even have this conversation with someone that's older like in these countries? And the reason I want to bring up that one is because I think that's important, right? I'm not sure I understand. It's a new thing for me. I'm not sure I understand the origin, and I think that's kind of like the goal of even this entire podcast, right? Is shit I didn't really understand either like before, right? I've heard arguments from like people like that are for it, people that are against it, but I guess the hope is just to have that conversation, right? Like if it's someone that hasn't heard the word before, hey, go out and like do a little bit of research on it. Use this podcast as a frame of reference for like, you know, the context we've provided. But go ahead and look at it on your own and have this conversation with your own people, with your own parents, right? I think that's why I kind of want to bring that one up.
Cool.
Okay, here's another one. It's valid. People are just transphobic.
Okay, I mean, duh. Like, is water wet? I don't like.
Okay, but now that one.
The second part, like people are transphobic. Yeah, they are transphobic. Yeah, but like, what was he saying? Expound.
Hey, look at you. Who said it was he?
What was they saying? I'm sorry. See, I don't think about it, dude.
For sure. Like, and I think that's completely fair, right? Like, there was no malintent in what you just said, but it goes back to saying like it's a challenge. What did they say? I think they're saying that like anyone that is against using this word is inherently transphobic.
Yeah, I was confused. Okay.
Right. So you saying
that's because there's only so many characters you can respond in. So I'm sure that person was kind of like, what the fuck? Okay.
Hey, they were just straight to the point.
Yeah.
They were just straight to the point. And so I actually kind of went, not back and forth with this person, but I kind of asked them to like say like, do you think this is the only reason there is pushback on the use of the word? Yeah, exactly. And I have that here as well. And they said, yeah. They were just straight to the point. They said, yes.
Excuse me?
And I addressed the same conversation we had. What about the people that are, you know, having the linguistic argument? And they more so referred to, right, that there is linguistic professors that have shown that you can use it in the language, but people just don't want to because they're transphobic. I
mean, to play devil's advocate, there's also people that like say you can not wear masks anymore, and we're not doing that either. So
like, for sure, and I think
professors and experts aren't always professors and experts.
There was a difference in opinion, and there always will be, right? Like, so I'm not a social scientist, but I've spent some time like in the research world of like higher education, and there's always a difference of opinions.
Yeah,
like you can have an expert in XYZ. And there's someone on the opposite side of that coin that is also an expert in the same X and the same Y and the same Z.
Someone who works out and is trying to get in shape. I don't know if carbs are good or bad for me. So,
and there's experts out there that, you know, and maybe that's a great example of like, hey, whatever works.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That was just my point. Is like just because a professor said it just doesn't mean. But go ahead.
Yeah. So I think
not to discount that person's opinion at all.
And so this is the last one that I'll bring up, right? In my opinion, use it if you want, but there's no need to bash people who do use it. Also, I think Latine sounds a bit better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think after this conversation, that's about what your answer is.
Kind of. Yeah.
Right.
Like I said.
I am super interested in seeing where Latine goes.
Yeah.
Kind of what happens there. Because I think that's going to be the next, I guess, big conversation. And maybe that's hopefully the one that like this podcast will like spark if you're listening to this episode. The Latina versus Latinx and like what you really think.
What do you think about like, it's not as striking like on like seeing it written. Like you could see it and be like, oh, that was a typo. But like the X just like, X is just like a stronger letter. You know what I mean? Like, X just stands out. You know what I'm saying? Like,
it's a powerful, it has a powerful connotation. Kind of like the R.
Here. Yeah.
Right? R has a strong, like, you know.
Yeah.
That's why they call it murder.
And
not muck duck.
Deep cuts. If you know, you know.
Hey, if you know, you know, bro. Shout out to all the homies. Shout out to The Office.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that person. I think that is where I'm at. Like, you want to use it, cool. If you want me to address you as such because that's how you identify, I will. But personally, I'm of the belief that Latinos is gender neutral when I'm referring to a group of people. And
yeah, for sure.
So.
And again, that I think we prefaced at the beginning of the episode.
And that's just me.
We were not here to say, hey, we think you should use this word. We think you shouldn't use this word. We're here to have a conversation between ourselves on why we each think.
Yeah. Also, like I said, I'm not going to down this hill. So if you want to use it, go ahead, man.
Yeah.
Have a ball.
Fair. I guess I'll highlight this one because this was probably...
Oh, is that a problematic one?
It's not problematic. It was just dumb. This was missing the assignment.
Oh, man.
Sounds like some sexy shit.
What? How? Is he fetishizing Latinos and Latinas and all Latinx? Yeah. What's going on here?
I don't know. I literally was just like, okay.
So like some sexy shit.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess.
I don't know. I guess, we're
pretty sexy, I guess. Like in the scientific definition.
Oh, so you know what? That's a thing though, right? Like the...
maybe that's what they were trying to do.
That's a racial, I guess, stereotype that's looked right with sexualizing like Latinas, right? Like as kind of like these.
Where are you going with this? I think you're opening a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah, I think that was like jumps back to when I was reading about like the race thing, and then that jumped into racism and like examples, and it gave us an example of kind of how, or maybe it was the ethnocentrism example, just like using
big words,
using someone's identity as like a negative stereotype, right? And like kind of sexualizing Latin women, Latinas, right? And that was like an example of that being inappropriate or a bad thing.
Don't be fetishizing our Latin queens.
There was a couple of other responses. Thank you to everyone that did respond. I think I just didn't want to. A lot of people shared a similar sentiment. Again, one that was from, I'm not like tied down to the word. I'm still learning a lot about it. It's
whether
fairly
you agree
new
or disagree, whether you want to use it or not. Again, the intent behind it is
hey, and if anyone listening to this thinks we missed the mark, let us know.
Yeah.
Or if there's something that we didn't consider.
For sure. I'm sure we missed stuff.
For sure.
I always miss stuff.
We always do.
What I was gonna say is at the very least, like for better or worse, it's, and you said it earlier, it's causing a conversation and it's spreading awareness, and those are steps 1 and 2 or whatever, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like
yeah.
So,
yeah. And I definitely
whether it's not the solution, maybe it is. But,
exactly.
You know, as long as people are talking about this community and how to, again, respect them as equals and
as
and
a
treat
people,
them as
for
equals
sure,
and whatever,
because they are a part of our community, right? Like, and that's the, again, I think the hardest part is like we're not a monolith. There are a lot of people.
I just think of the Key and Peele skit. you ever seen the Key and Peele skit about the Black Republicans?
No,
we are not a monolith, and they're all like the exact same. He's like, I'm pissed. Oh, sorry.
It's the dude that's on the phone, the meme that's they're calling people.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, like
no one knows what I'm talking about.
We have,
if anybody sees Key and Peele,
a lot of different people under our umbrella. So finding terms that help, identify us as a people can be difficult. But I think, again, maybe the solution isn't that. Maybe it's not Latinx. Maybe it's not Latine, right? Again, I think it will come from that community in these countries that are respecting both sides of the argument. And I'm interested in seeing, and hopefully, people are having these conversations because I do think they matter. Brings back to the very beginning. These terms matter. Maybe not on a day-to-day basis when you're just kind of living your life, but in the grand scheme of things, they are important. But yeah, do you have any final thoughts? Anything else on that? I think that was a pretty good conversation.
Yeah, I think so too. You were trying to set me up for failure at the beginning.
Hey,
About,
no-
I'm excited. I'm excited. My co-host hates this. I'm like, fuck you.
Well, I think so. The very, very first time we had this conversation, you were like very like,
No,
Not rocking with it.
So a little tidbit about me. I don't really care about you. Like not like that, but like I kind of go. No. I'm saying like I'm a very nonchalant person.
For sure.
Period. Like that's just my demeanor.
Yeah,
right?
I think you don't let yourself get invested in things that I think maybe aren't super impactful to you.
Yeah.
that's-
And I mean, but that
doesn't mean you don't care.
Doesn't speak. Yeah, that's not going to speak
sure.
to like my
doesn't mean you
moral
can't empathize.
beliefs. Yeah,
Yeah.
all that stuff. Like it's just maybe you caught me. Maybe I was hungry at the time and I was trying to eat some food. I don't know, but I'm just saying.
What an excuse.
Shut up. I'm no. Like
What are excuses?
whenever I'm just like on a surface level and like I'm not. But like when it really comes down to it, these things are important. Like
For sure.
they are. So if I'm gonna get serious, I'm gonna get serious. And so
Yeah.
like and it's important to get serious about things like these.
And maybe that's why I would say I was more excited, right? Because I think there's a common thought out there in the world that Rudy is the more serious of the
And I'm
podcasters
the
on this,
funny guy.
and Kevin is the funny, lighthearted.
I like the jokey joke. I like. See, I like.
He's the hot take man, and I think you're right. I do enjoy having
I like being ignorant.
these type of conversations from a serious perspective sometimes.
And I came with the
And
seriousness.
sorry
today.
if I'm boring about it, guys.
Yeah.
Shit.
No, but today was important. It's an important thing. So
especially because this is very about us
Yeah.
as a people. So for sure. No, I mean, thank you. I did just kind of want to end on one brief note. I think it would be irresponsible for us to not address kind of what's happening in.
Rudy's going off the rails, guys.
I am
I
going
don't know
off-
what he's talking about. This could go either really well or really badly.
Well, no. Again, I want to address what's happening in Palestine and with
okay.
Palestinian people, and just kind of say, in my opinion, right, in the way I feel, like I am, and you can say, hey, you are anti-war, you are anti-violence, and I will respect that. But I think seeing what's happening in this country, in this area of the world, it is. The Palestinian people have my support, right? And I am very free Palestine. I am very, I do believe that what the Israeli government and forces are doing to this group of people is a form of ethnic cleansing, and it's not. I don't think it should be a hot take saying that you support Palestinians, right? Especially just their right to live, their right to defend themselves, their right to survive. And I think it's also not controversial to say that America is not just complicit, but has been a part of the problem for such a long time. And I'm hoping,
Butting their noses where it doesn't belong.
and I'm hoping that all the attention that this is garnering, like, is good, right? And we see the support that Palestinians deserve, especially as they are being, killed.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I will end there, man. So
Very well said.
If
Very well
anyone
said. I
has
was
any
honestly
issues with
scared.
that, you know what I'm saying, hit my line. We could definitely have a conversation about it.
I was honestly scared where you were going with that, but cool. Very well said. I'm glad that you didn't.
And I may have missed the mark a little bit even there, right? Because at the end of the day, people say it's complicated. I don't think it's that complicated, right? I think there's one group of people that are being attacked and being killed, and more so than the other. And so you can definitely, say you are, like I said, anti-war, anti-violence, whatever.
Yeah.
But don't try to paint the narrative in a certain way where it seems like it's on equal footing. So that's all I got to say about that. So thank you guys and ladies and everybody for listening today.
Look at you.
Hey, you see? Catch myself. Shout out to everybody out there listening to us.
All
We
you
do
beautiful
appreciate.
people. We love you.
We do appreciate y'all hanging in there with us. And we look forward to seeing y'all again. Thank you.
Adios.
Test. How do I sound?
You sound like.
Am I loud? Am I not loud?
Ooh, you sound like Johnny Sins on.
Oh my god. Cut. All right, ready?
You know exactly who that is.
I do know exactly. That's why I hate that I know who that is.